Huskar can be an absolute powerhouse, and we've seen endless players brute force their way to a 20-minute victory as the Beast. But what happens if you lose the lane with a hero that typically relies on snowballing? Today, you're going to learn exactly what to do as Huskar when your lane was a disaster, so you can dominate in the mid and late game. We'll be analyzing how one of the top Huskars, Matumbaman, is able to come back online after having a rough start. But before I start, I'd just like to let you guys know that you can learn from hundreds of pro guides like this one on our website gameleap.com, and we even have a special 2019 discount for you guys. Check it out at the end of the video. Now let's dive right in. So before I go into what you should do after you lose the lane, I'm going to quickly talk about a few things Matumbaman does during the laning stage to cut his losses, or just a few things you should do in general when playing Huskar. So this can be more of an overall Huskar guide when you guys do eventually pick the hero. So what you're going to notice is that Matumbaman actually levels up his Q right off the bat in this lane, and this is something that definitely was not a thing with the old Huskar, but now that the Q got changed, it's a very low mana cost for a pretty high damage nuke that disarms and can secure early CS. So it's definitely good to do this on Huskar, as the E is not nearly as good as it used to be. So you notice he secures a few early CS with it. It actually does end up getting punished, but it's definitely something you want to take into consideration, as Huskar is very bad damage early on. Now what you're going to notice next is Matumbaman puts his next 2 points into his E. So the new Huskar is not necessarily played around crushing people with your burning spears, especially in matchups that are unfavorable or matchups where they can harass you out. It's much more important to sustain the lane by maxing out your E. What else your E does is it gives you the ability to jungle, because it constantly gives you a ton of HP regen and attack speed. So it's a very good spell now, and definitely something to consider in harder matchups. So Matumbaman's going to end up going down here, and what's important to note is that when he comes back into the laning stage, he's going to buy extra regen. And this is crucial. I see so many players just return to the laning stage with no regen, and it really will hurt you, because you either have to walk back to base and waste a ton of time, or just simply get zoned out of lane and have to wait on the side lane and get no CS. So you notice he actually had it delivered on the courier, so he already had it coming. But the main idea here is that you have regen, or else you'll just go into this flow where you get zoned out and stay way too far behind. So you notice here that the wave is pushing into Matumbaman, and it's very important to know what he does here. So he puts some harass onto the Veno, so he knows Veno is not going to come back into the lane. But after he gets this wave off his tower, what he does with the next set of creeps is that he tries to push it out pretty quickly. And this is for a few reasons. He wants to get as many CS as possible before the Veno gets back and can contest him, or potentially kill him with a gank, and he wants to go jungle. So you notice here, if he gets a wave on his high ground, he can quickly jungle this camp, which will help him in efficiency. And what it also does is it makes his next wave potentially go under the tower, and then eventually reach him at his tower. So there's a few good reasons for this, as he doesn't want to approach onto the enemy high ground, which will most likely get him killed. So this is a nice way of increasing efficiency without putting yourself in a dangerous position. So I'm going to quickly talk about a few things about the mid lane in general, and specifically things on a hero that you should do when you are behind. So you notice the first course of action that Matumbaman always takes is to push out the mid lane and make sure that his tower is okay. His tower is still very high HP, he's struggling very heavily, he has many deaths already, and will be 0-5 by the 10-minute mark, but his mid tower never falls. And because of this, the enemy team is not able to transition these ganks into map control, but rather they just get usually 1 or 2 kills out of it, which is not great obviously for him, but you'll notice he always TPs back mid, right? He never just lets the Veno pressure this tower in for free. It does take a lot of damage because they've rotated 4 heroes, but what's important is that he defends his mid tower. That's his #1 priority, pushing out the lane and defending the tower. And then once that's already done, once again, after he pushes out the mid wave, he goes and takes a jungle camp. This increases your efficiency without giving up too much on the map. So right here, Matumbaman got ganked once again, and you'll notice that around 4 enemy heroes run to the bottom lane, maybe 3, and he assesses this and sees their movement due to the ward, and because of this, he immediately pressures in the lane with this cart, and pressures the tower. So even if you're behind, if you see a gap like this where the enemy team rotates and you have something like a cart, then it's really nice to pressure the wave, right? You should never just completely tunnel vision and jungle, because that actually got him half the damage on the mid tower, which eventually could lead into a mid tower. So at this point in the game, Matumbaman has lost his mid tower, so now he's just going to be jungling Ancients, and this is something that is very important to do in Huskar. The hero, especially when you're full HP, can take Ancients, and this will rapidly increase your XP gain as well as gold gain. So it's definitely good to note that you can take Ancients on Huskar. There's a lot of heroes that can't do it early, but Huskar, at even only 14 minutes into the game, is able to take Ancients, and this gives him nearly a half a level and a ton of gold, almost completing his armlet. So not only does he take Ancients, but it's a great time for him to take Ancients because his mid tower already fell. So this is a very calculated time to actually start farming the triangle. He doesn't just do this the entire game. So the enemy team just took Aegis, and a fight broke out bottom, and this PL has an Aegis, but you notice Matumbaman still assesses the positioning of the PL as out of position, and is able to actually claim the PL Aegis here, and this is a pretty big deal, because it could either lead into a PL kill later on, or it prevents him from pushing, right? He was very aware of the fact that the enemy team was not rotating with this PL, and that because PL felt so overconfident with this Aegis, he was able to punish it and take it off of him. Heads up plays like that are what separate 6k players from 7, 8, 9k players. And once again, now that he took the Aegis, PL is subsept to a ganked, and look what happens. They pick up a kill on the highest net worth hero in the game, a huge recovery for someone who was 0-5 at the 10-minute mark. So Matumbaman spots a Slaughter in the bottom lane, and up and coming, he makes a very questionable decision, and I just want to discuss it because I feel like a lot of people who look at this at first glance will just be like, alright, he was out of position, this is just bad movement. And I would definitely say this is not a perfect play or a really great play, but Matumbaman starts moving towards the mid lane here with his Rubik, and I'm going to pause here. So if you look at the map currently, he sees 3 heroes top and his Rubik mid, and he saw a core moving mid earlier. So with the help of his Rubik, I believe he was looking to get a pick off mid lane. This is something that is very good to do when you are a hero that is not the #1 farm priority. His Morphling is the #1 farm priority. I'm not saying go and kill yourself, but looking to make plays, the idea of looking to make plays when you are not the highest farm priority hero is something that can make a lot of space and cause heroes that want to be farming and supports that want to be setting up vision or setting up for towers to move around the map. What I would also say is he's going to end up dying here. You'll notice he was actually under a ward, and he realizes he's out of position, but it's a little bit too late. So he gets caught. But what ends up happening is they TP 5 heroes. And another great thing about this is, well, maybe they didn't TP 5 heroes, but what is great about this is that they all rotate to this one bottom area, and this gives a lot of vision. So Morphling gets to farm the bottom lane, the supports and their off-lane Shadow Demon gets to push out the top lane, and the Witch Doctor even potentially gets to set up more vision if he wants. And while he's still dead, I'd like to mention one more main concept that I think is very important. Whenever you're losing, if you can get the enemy team to rotate multiple heroes on their side of the map, it can be extremely beneficial. Simply because if they get a kill at a tower, they can transition right into the tower and further their lead. But if they get a kill on their side of the map, it's not nearly as big of a deal, as they cannot quickly transition to a tower, and if they do try to, maybe you'll respawn around that time and be able to come back and fight them. It's important to note that Matumbaman did not recklessly throw himself at towers to make space. He simply defended mid throughout the game and jungled his items. This doesn't mean that he wasn't checking the map for kills, as you saw he killed the PL. However, his team was behind throughout a lot of the mid game, so he didn't force him into poor engagements with underfarm cores. Too often do Huskars feel like they need to snowball with their armlet timing, and this just isn't always the case. If they have heroes like Slaughter or Venge where they're going to be able to catch you if you're out of position, you can't make plays like forcing towers. It's going to get your supports killed, and it's going to feed a lot of gold to the enemy team. So it's better to just jungle up your items, play it a little bit more slow, and force them to take engagements. So what you're seeing here is that a Slaughter and the enemy team feel that they need to start making kills happen. Because Matumbaman did not feed too many kills away, the enemy team feels that they are falling behind, right? They have a Morphling and a Huskar, pretty scary scaling with this Veno who doesn't farm nearly as fast, or they just feel like they want to make plays. It could be a few reasons, but because of this, the enemy team makes a play into their side of the jungle. Once again, they didn't throw themselves at towers, so the enemy team has to make the dangerous plays, and they even get a nice PL kill out of this. So if you're patient, especially when you're behind, people might make mistakes. Coordinating early game ganks, such as the ones that made Matumbaman go 0-5 by 10 minutes are pretty easy, right? Because you're only ganking one hero at a tower. It's not that hard. But mid-game ganks, when you have poor vision, is much harder. So looking for mistakes at this point in the game is very good strategy, rather than necessarily trying to force towers early on. So up and coming here, you're about to see the Rubik get ganked. This is the Dire once again starting an engagement, but this time as 5. So when you see this Rubik get ganked, it's important to note that Matumbaman notices this and is very careful not to overcommit. So Rubik gets jumped upon, but Matumbaman is underfarmed, right? So without BKB or high armor, he's nowhere near invincible. Instead, he plays patient and picks off this Venge, who is clearly overextending in the backline momentarily. Realize he turns around. He does not overcommit. A lot of Huskars here would have overcommit, jumped into 4 heroes, and just died because they thought they were invincible. Matumbaman, however, plays it slow, and then eventually pounces on this PL, who they do catch. So he does not play the fight way too fast. When you're behind on Huskar, you kind of need to play like you're behind, right? I think too many players would be like, I'm this frontline hero, I need to jump in, I need to take damage from my team. But this is not the case. You do not want to kill yourself. Your hero does a lot of damage from the backline, and not only that, by not overcommitting the fight, he allows his supports to stay back. His positioning is going to determine where his supports go as well. So because he stays back, his supports are able to stay back because they have the mindset that this is how the fight is going. So his positioning helps his team stay coordinated and stay very poised and take the fight. Next, upcoming here, there are a few enemy heroes dead, but it's important, very important. I think this is crucial actually. There's so many players who, when they get kills at this like 4 or 5k tier, that are like, okay, I have to get a tower here, right? We want to fight. Finally, we won a convincing fight. But this is not the case. The enemy heroes were going to be respawning in 10 to 20 seconds. And instead of doing this, he goes in jungles, and builds his net worth advantage. This is a great way to push your advantage, besides putting yourself in a very dangerous position by pressuring a tower. Alright, this is going to be one of the last fights of the game. Matumbaman at this point, with his freshly new purchased plate mail, knows how strong his team is, so now he's going to play the frontline role, right? He has his plate mail, and his team is a lot more farm than they used to be. So this time he takes the frontline role. And the rest is history. They take this game. Definitely a very hard game, right? He was 0-5 at the 10-minute mark, but because of his very smart plays, is able to take a pretty convincing victory. And you could be like, his team carried him, but this PL was highest net worth by far, and Veno was number 2 for a large portion of the game. So yeah, I think this is a super great example why you should not tilt out after the landing stage, and simply play it through and play it slow. So I'm going to wrap up the video here, but I'd like to give 3 closing remarks. First priority as Huskar is to defend your mid tower, but if it is not being threatened, jungling the side camp increases efficiency greatly. Number 2, do not force your team into poor engagements when behind. Play back, but be ready to respond if the enemy team overextends. And number 3, if you're underfarmed as a Huskar and a teamfight breaks out, look to pick off weak backline supports or overextending heroes. Your hero is not invincible when behind, so just don't play like it. If you're looking to rise in MMR, you must be able to persevere in the games that are seemingly not going your way. Using Matumbaman strategies that you've learned today, you can make a grand comeback in your own solo queue games. Lastly, don't forget about our limited 2019 deal, where you can learn from pro guides like this one for 50% off. If you enjoyed the video or learned anything about Dota at all, please like and subscribe to help our channel grow.